Welcome to Shiny Side Out with Dave.
And Mackie.
We're coming to you live from the Sydney studios. We're one piece of the information puzzle on Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com. Collaborate with us in the chat while we're on air. Follow us on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook to get updates between shows. And check out our website for featured guests, previous show notes. And if you missed out during the show, you can access all the links we paste into the chat. If you're in the US, you can call in on 347-688-2902, or if you have Skype, you can add Freedom Screen and you can join in. Hey, this is show number 46, isn't it, Mac?
46 it is, absolutely, Bunny. We are approaching the 1 year mark
on
Revolution Radio, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's an achievement.
I think so, yeah.
Did you think we were going to get this far in already?
I had no idea. No, I thought a couple of shows, then just no one's going to listen anyway. Going to take us off the air. The theater, the long stick with the hook. When they pull you off stage.
Yeah.
Whoosh! That's what I thought was going to happen to us.
Yeah, like a small explanation, like saying, you're just not our audience or whatever it is. Man.
Yeah.
That's okay.
That's it. Look, you guys you're great, but not here.
You're great everywhere else but here.
You've got a voice for TV. What? There's a face for radio. Voice for TV. I don't know. Am I insulted or am I happy? I'm just rambling here. Look, guys.
I think you can only work in TV when you're too short to be a jockey.
That's probably true. Because all those guys, even in the movies, even John Wayne, Tom Cruise, they're all short.
Yeah, absolutely. John Wayne had to stand on a box. And in fact, I've been to Universal Studios. On one side of the street is a full-size replica of the same side of the street as the other side, except it's 3/4 sized.
Oh,
so
really?
when he walked through the door into the bar, he looked like he filled the whole doorway.
And everybody, they all walked in a trench next to him, right?
They used to do the trench stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Or he was on boxes.
That's hilarious, dude.
Mm-hmm. They should just get bigger actors,
So what you're telling me there, Dave, and I'm not sure if I'm hearing you right, so it's going to be clear there. TV is not real?
No.
Dude, wash out your mouth.
Hey, the magic of television. I love it. I live it. This is the magic of radio.
Oh, it's even better, right? You don't know what we look like. I'm huge. I'm 7'7", actually.
Wow, that's awesome. That's just the way I remembered you too.
Yeah, I can paint the roof of my own house without a ladder, and I've got 3 stories. That's not true either. I don't have stories. No. And I never paint my roof. Right.
And I can fly. So there you go.
Yes, me too. Once. You just have to keep missing the ground, right? You fall down, keep missing the ground. That's what. It's a
controlled crash.
Douglas Adams, yeah, that's what he said.
You jump up and miss the ground.
That's how you fly. Okay, look, hey, interesting news week, I think, as well. And certainly in Australia and around the world. We are having Australia Day this week, meaning we're celebrating the imperialization of Australia and the subjugation of the Aboriginal people that lived here 200 years ago. So, hurrah for us. Right? Naysayer.
You know what? I believe in Australia, and I like what it is now.
I'm not
sure we got here in the right path, but we're here now,
No, I agree.
That's a good thing.
It is a good thing. Maybe it should be on a different day, but it should be inclusive. It should be more inclusive, I guess, than it is. It's getting there. It's a good thing. But most of you guys in the States probably don't know, but some 200 years ago, Cook came here and discovered it, I guess, for the British, even though the Dutch had been here before him, and which and
even the Egyptians.
Yeah, it looks like certainly Chinese as well, Indonesians, Indians. In fact, we know this now. This is part of the news. There has been a recent DNA study shows that there was a massive influx of Indian DNA, so Indian settlers, I guess. I have to lie here. It could be 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, at the same time as the arrival of the dingo, which is the Australian wild dog. So the fact seems to be that Indians came here, left a lot of their genetic material, and the dingo. And interestingly, on top of that, my friend who is Indian told me when his grandmother came to visit, and I think they may have gone to the top end in Northern Australia. I'm not sure. I got to lie here, but the essence of what he said was this: she said to him, the Indian grandmother, said to my friend, they talk like I understand what they're saying. So the linguistic similarities between the Aboriginal language, and I don't know which one it is, and there are many of them, and the Indian language that his grandmother was speaking. I find that quite interesting.
Probably not as much similarity between Spanish and Italian.
Probably not.
But still, if she's able to recognize words out of it, that's amazing.
I agree. So that was years ago when he said that to me, and now with this DNA evidence coming through, there seems to be, at the very least, a kernel of connection there, which is quite amazing. But other than that, we've got some really bad bushfires here. People have died now. We can expect hotter summers in the future, or more of the same. We can expect drier conditions. We can expect more bushfires. Australia is prone to bushfires, and you've got the same problem, I think, in the States, in California certainly, and the southern states. But California is what we seem to be hearing a lot about, the massive bushfires. But
it's funny that I'm sorry, it's not funny. I should point out that in California, like you guys have adopted the same trees that we have, the gum trees, the eucalypts. They explode into fire when they're burnt, and they survive on fire.
Yes.
So in California, most of the hills are all grassland. It's like 2 foot tall grass, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when that catches fire, it's tinder anyway, and it just burns like a match. It's so quick, maybe even the phosphorus on the end of the match, it burns so quick. Except that when you hit the gum trees, they explode into flames, and that sends unburnt embers, miles and miles ahead of the flame front. So when we have our fires, it's not just the actual fire itself, but it's anything below the smoke plume can drop a live ember onto your house, into the gutter where the leaves are, and it'll catch fire and your house burns down.
Mm-hmm.
So we have an accelerated risk here because all our bush is just those trees, and I live amongst 45 yard tall trees. That scares me.
You have to understand, Dave lives up on a mountain or hillside. Let's call it a hillside.
It's a hillside.
Right on top, or toward the top of it, and right on top of him is perched a massive boulder. I think you're living in Boulder Road or something, right?
Yeah, that's right.
It's
named
perched
after a boulder.
So it's named after the boulder, right?
Yeah.
and it's perched quite precariously. On the bright side, though, Dave's house will not burn. And that's then
because
in fact,
of the materials it's made of.
Yeah, and I have to say there was some awesome engineering there. Dave used a foamy kind of concrete. Am I right?
Yep, that's right. Hebel.
Hebel.
Yep. And it can't burn and doesn't transmit heat through it. It's just an amazing material, and steel.
Fantastic. And yeah, in fact, you've sunk your steel posts down to the bedrock, if I remember correctly.
That's right. More than 6 meters through the ground, and each one of them goes into bedrock.
Now that's a house that you want to be in when whatever hits us.
That's why I built it.
Aha!
Aha!
Aha! Of course, if it's a direct hit, you can't do anything. Too bad.
If it's a direct hit, I'm going to be mush.
Yes, but probably preferable.
I wanted to continue on the weather thing. Whilst we're burning alive down in New South Wales, in Queensland, they've just had 1 meter of water in 48 hours. Of rain.
A lot of water. That's a lot of water.
That's 3 foot, guys. 36 inches of rain in 48 hours. And I think 2 years ago, when the floods were on, and they all their dams, they said, we're sweet, we got lots of flood catchment area, and they started letting some of the water out in advance of the flood water coming down through the valleys. They started emptying all the dams out in front of that, and that wasn't enough. Wow. And they're saying they have 1 million cubic megaliters. So it's 1 million million megaliters, which is 1 million liters of catchment storage. However, it looks like it's going to exceed it again. So 2 years later, last 2 years ago, it was a once in 100 year flood, and this might be, I don't know, Maybe they'll make a new term twice in 100 years.
Or it'll just be the flood, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Going forward, we're just having a flood. It's just the flood now, right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, you're just going to have floods.
Yeah.
It's funny that our we have the term drought and flooding rain. Right? That we live in a sunburnt country, a land of droughts and flooding rains. That one line tells us everything about this country.
Yeah, that's true.
It didn't mention anything about the lethal creatures.
No, and you know the spiders and the snakes and the scorpions and the bugs and the mosquitoes and what we don't have is large predators, or at least so we think. I think the jury is still out on that, but we certainly don't have very many large predators. Only in the water, you got the sharks, the crocodiles and the snapping turtles and all kinds of things there. It's interesting though that
freshwater and saltwater crocs.
Yeah, and it's just a joy. People get eaten by those things, It's interesting though. We've always had floods and droughts in Australia, and that's nothing new. In fact, the flora and fauna both need floods and droughts to survive. I mean, the plants need heat. For some plants, I should say, need heat or fire for the seeds to be spread. So they explode out or they're burned up, and they can blossom again once the rains come. But not this severe, I think. Not this hot and not this much rain. Because if it's pummeled like this, there won't be. I guess there won't be an interlude for flowering to take place if everything is washed away. These floods are massive, guys. It washes away the earth, essentially, right? You've got these huge rivulets, that are like canyons. Well, not quite canyons, but all these fertile soil is washed away. And
I have to say that the area that's affected by flood is the size of Texas.
No, that's big. Bigger.
Everything's bigger in Texas, but our floods are as big as Texas.
Yes, and Arizona is bigger than Texas, but that's okay.
Is it really in square miles?
Arizona is actually bigger than Texas, but hey, that's all good. It's just a little bit of trivia for you guys.
Don't tell the Texans.
Don't tell the Texans, no. And I think Arizonans have also more desert than you do. I'm sure there are a lot of people from Texas listening to us. In fact, I would love to talk to someone one day. I love the way they talk.
And I apologize for my co-host.
Oh, hey, come on! I love Texans. Whatever, they're gonna be the first to secede if it ever happens. I reckon.
Oh yeah, actually, and that's on the top of my. I've got a list of all the states, and I think they would be definitely on the top.
Yep.
And now, but that was even talked about on. It wasn't CNN. It was another station.
Mm-hmm.
It was talked about on Australian television, and even Tosh.0. So they brought it up as a comedic bit on his show, and I went, wow.
Yep.
Because I was thinking it was the American government that put that website out that said, we the people, blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to, raise something with us, we'll answer it. And they initially started with like 5,000 votes. So if you have 5,000 people signing your petition, they'll put an answer out for your question. They kept raising the ceiling because they kept getting more and more people with stupid questions. And they ended up with 100,000. So now you need 100,000 or something, like 120 or something like that, to get your question out. One of those questions, which I even voted for, which I put my name down for, was, I wanted... I think the question was a poorly worded question to do with divulging what they knew about UFOs.
Really?
Well, yeah. They've already done one. But
I had no idea. Okay.
You know what? We could do another one. Tell us what you know about orbitally rearranged monatomic elements.
Nothing.
Nothing. So, it only takes the amount of listeners on our show to be able to get one of these things through. So I reckon I would put the call out to everyone. We've got our email up and running. Send us an email. Tell us what we should ask.
Yeah,
we should design those questions and let's put them up, Mick. You don't have to be a voting member of American society to question.
No, I agree. Let's 100%, absolutely. And guys, and this is what we really want to encourage as well, Dave and I. We'd like to hear more from you. what you want to hear. So rather than just being an audience, right, being passive, we would love you to interact with us and ask questions, topics. This question is fantastic. This is a great idea, Dave. So if we get something, that'd be awesome. So in fact, we have engaged with some people that we work with, and they've come up to me and they want to come on expeditions that we're planning to. And one of the guys, Dave Smith, has kindly offered his massive SUV to take us out into the bush to do some, I guess, some amateur archaeology. And Paul Hovey, has already done that, in fact, but would like to come along again. So again, just do it. Just come along. And if you're near us in Australia, then we're happy to even, interact on that level. If because at the end of the day, as we go forward, we are hoping that more and more people will awaken to the call. There was a very interesting roundtable on Saturday night, and they spoke about people being asleep. I agree. People are asleep. We need to wake them. There's a movie which I love. It's called They Live. And the slogan is, we sleep, they live. They being the elite. In that particular movie, happen to be aliens that pretty much bought us out. And then we're just their livestock to some extent, with all the elite humans working with them. But and this is in fact is sort of the show's topic today in a way. And then we can use it as an elegant segue. And we know I know it's not so elegant if you say it's a segue, but but it is. So because Dave and I we connected the dots for you guys in show 40, and we started in show 42 really. Mm-hmm. Some difficulties, some technical difficulties and otherwise, but in show 46, show 45 last week, we had a really good show, and I think we did a good job of connecting the shows that went before. As we went back to our notes though, and all the shows that had gone before, we realized that some of the things we discussed a long time ago. So immortality, for instance, right? That was show number 6. And that's a long time ago. And some of you might not be familiar with all the material that we presented. And in fact, I don't think that show is on YouTube.
No.
For you to, yeah. So what we're going to do today, we're going to do a bit of a recap, not a rehash, but just a few highlights so you will understand our stance on immortality or extreme longevity, or someone who has broken the rebirth life cycle memory loss, or whatever you want to call it. And we've got a few facts for you there. The show notes are of course available on our website, shinysiteout.net, which Dave is the webmaster of and is doing a bang up job, I have to say. He's doing a fantastic job. Which reminds me, since we're talking about housekeeping, this is a listener-supported radio station, okay? Which means we don't charge you a fee. There's no subscription. Everything you hear is free content. It's freely available on the net. We just package it up for you and give it to you, and hopefully in an entertaining fashion. However, Nighthawk and the crew are working really hard to keep the infrastructure alive. Okay, so there's servers that need to be maintained, and routers, and bills have to be paid. And he does it out of his own pocket. And it would be great if you could contribute. Just donate to Revolution Radio. There are donation buttons on the side, I believe.
Yes, it is.
So you can just hit those. Any amount helps, really. And if you like this kind of content, and there are many other great shows, please do donate. It will really help out. Dave and I do when we can. Dave more than I, because he's much richer than I am. So that's he lives
he's
in a
making that up.
He's living in a fireproof house. All kinds of things. But yeah. So let's talk about, unless there's some other burning matters. Let's talk about our view on immortality, Dave. Let's give the listeners our take on it. What do you think?
Yeah, well, look, can I just talk about what happens when you age?
Yeah, please do, buddy.
All right. So, our bodies, I have to tell you that we have cells that get old and they get replaced. And that happens through a replication process, which, like our DNA inside the cell has some sacrificial DNA, junk DNA, and they're called telomeres. And every time your cells divide to make a new one, where the old one's been damaged or it's been replicated away, as you say your fingernails grow, for instance, or your hair grows, or your skin's change, and I think your skin changes once a week. Within a week, your outer layer of skin is renewed. Your eyes do it once a day. If you didn't know that, that's awesome. All of us, all parts of us are renewed from the cell structure up. When it does that, the DNA strands themselves, the DNA pair that splits into another DNA pair, actually the new copy has less DNA information in it because of the junk DNA that's being sacrificed in the process. It actually costs us our strand lengths, and they're called, those little bits on the end have been named as telomeres. Now, up until we're about, I think the calculation was about 15 to 18 years old, male and female, those telomeres are actually continued to grow so that they're replicating intact. And that chemical has been named by humans to be telomere. Now, we produce telomere, the chemical, which grows telomeres. Just think of them like those little protective plastic ends on your shoelaces. Every time the cell divides to make another cell, it's, say, cut in half. There's an amount that's lost off it. Now, when you hit around like mid-20s up till about 35, depending on what kind of existence you've had, if you've been a calm person who's, loved life and you've had a good life, you can still look young if you've had little stress. We all know those people who are highly stressed people look older. They do, because your cells reproduce faster, you're in a state of stress, and that's what our body does to compensate for it. And you can chew through the telomeres like they're going out of fashion. Seriously, right? When you hit 35, you'll notice things to do with yourself that your skin starts to have the look of aging. Now, that is literally because it's chewed through all of the telomeres, and now you're into your real DNA and you're corrupting your DNA. It's not because of any other process. That is it. That's what it's been found to have been, and that's all it is. That's aging, and that's how it happens. However, if you were to consume a material which grows your telomeres back, you'll go back to about looking 35 regardless of your age. And the Nobel Peace Prize winner for medicine, I think in 2009, was a doctor who went on to discover these very things we're talking about right now. And he's been self-medicating that stuff for a long time, and he's like 50 and he looks 35. So we know that it works, and you can let yourself get old and then take this stuff again, and it's available naturally in our environment. And Mech, would you like to cover off some of the places that you might be able to find this stuff?
You can find it in a whole variety of, certainly in the ocean. In fact, you can find it in the ocean in some form. But there's also a guy who was mining it, David Hudson, and he found it in Arizona, of all places, right? So he's actually in America where it naturally occurs. So
what are we talking about here, Mac?
Right. Sorry. ORME, orbitally rearranged monatomic elements, essentially, right? So what that is, white gold powder. We've spoken about this in other shows, and that is on YouTube. So I suggest do have a look at it. It's the stuff that has amazing properties. It has been used as fertilizer, and plants that use ORME substances grow to amazing sizes. And apparently people that ingest it are able to reverse, halt, and even reverse aging. Right? It seems to be reversed to the age of about 30, 35, Dave, I think, physically, at a physical appearance level, that is.
That's right.
And we think or that the white gold powder has got restorative qualities that are affecting the telomeres directly. Okay, they seem to either coat or attach themselves to the remaining telomeres and protect them from further degradation. In some cases, as I said, even reversing the process. That's pretty big if you think about it. That's a huge statement to make, and we understand that, right? So do your own research if you don't believe us. Why hasn't everybody got access to this? Well, it's a good question. Because number one, it's denied largely. It's very difficult to get any real information. There's a lot of stuff out there which claims to be the real thing, but is not. So they will take your money and give you some white powder and good luck to you. Okay.
Medicine show.
Yes, that's right.
Snake oil.
Yeah.
Hey, Mac. I was gonna say. So David Hudson. He found a white substance in his soil.
Yep.
And what was the result of all of that? Because I heard he patented it.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no. It's all patented. In fact, look, the thing with Dave Hudson is this. He spent millions of his own money to try and figure out what this thing is because he couldn't figure it out, right? He left some of it to dry in the sun and it just went poof in a well, it didn't go poof actually. It just, there was a bright flash and the substance disappeared, like, some kind of explosion kind of deal. And he was intrigued. So he had investigated, looked at it and finally was able to get somewhere with the Russians of all places. He had some Russian scientists who had built the machines to analyze the stuff he was sending them. Because in America, the machines didn't. The machines they didn't find anything unusual with it. They couldn't really find any unusual properties. But the Russians, because they knew what they were looking for, could.
Yeah. So in America, they were using arc mass spectrometer.
Yep.
In Russia, they were doing the same thing, but they were burning it for longer and longer. Apparently, I think 30 seconds was the maximum amount of time in the US legislated under law for any material to be examined by a mass spectrometer.
Yep.
Right? Because it turned up everything anyway. It turned it up, and you just turned the machine off, and there you go. There's your graph.
That's exactly right, but it wasn't long enough, was it? It wasn't quite long enough, and the Russians knew that, and they left the material in their chamber longer and under different temperatures as well. Mm-hmm. That's the key here. It was the length of time they were looking at it and analyzing it, and what temperature ranges they exposed it to. Because as you put this particular substance through varying temperatures, funny things happen, right? As the temperature rises, excuse me, the substance grows lighter. It grows lighter to the point where, in fact, the cumulative weight is less than the weighing tray on its own. So what that means is the powder makes anything around it lighter as well. And then at one particular temperature, and Dave loves this one, the thing disappears. Mm-hmm. Gone. Like, I'm not saying it explodes or disintegrates. No, it just disappears. And then, if the temperature again is reduced, it comes back in the same heap that you put it there, right? So it's in fact not destroyed. It just seems to shift, for want of a better word. And now this is tinfoil hat material.
Here we go.
It seems to shift out of our experiential dimension, the 4 dimensions we live in, up, down, right, left, and backward, forward, and time, into something we can no longer perceive. So another, let's call it dimension, right? There seems to be a dimensional shift. So maybe somebody in the other dimension is thinking, why is this white powder appearing? What's going on here?
And then it disappears again. They go, oh.
That was odd.
Whatever it was, it's gone now. I shouldn't worry about it.
Yeah, it was a weather balloon. It's okay. No problem.
Yes.
Okay, so again, and this is we don't want to get too much into the detail here, because that's a massive topic, and I think we spent 2 or 3 shows on this. Mm-hmm. Please, if you can, and don't take our word for it, educate yourselves and find out what you can about it. But don't be taken in by the charlatans that sell some of the stuff which isn't really it. So just be careful in producing it as well. It's not that easy to make. And philosophers, and this is where it comes in, the Philosopher's Stone and the Elixir of Life.
The Lost Secrets of the Ark.
Exactly, right?
By David Lawrence.
100%, right? He found a manufacturing or production site, if you will, in the Middle East, right, Dave?
Mm-hmm. It was at Mount Sinai, wasn't it?
Correct. correct.
So
Near Mount Sinai, I should say.
Yeah, near. So situated half in and half out of the mountain. So they'd built a structure on the face of a cave, and inside the cave they found they'd built it up, so it was all made of nicely neat stacked cut blocks to look like ancient tech.
Yep.
Anyway, they found the pharaohs all lined up in there. All the pharaohs pictures going back, I think, from the third one, all the way to the ones they knew.
Yep.
And they kept finding this symbol everywhere, and the symbol was gold. And the original explorers that found it were sifting through all this white powder trying to find the gold, and because they didn't know what that white powder was, and they were just tossing it out the door. Funny. They were tossing gold out the door because the gold forgot to be gold. Once you take the monatomic elements, when you remove the metallic bonds themselves, what's left is this white powder. That's all there is.
Yeah, and the thing is, it doesn't. There's no process that would turn it back into gold.
It's a one-way trip.
It's a one-way trip, buddy. That's right. But it's such an amazing trip, and the stuff that you're left with is, and this actually explains. And we spoke about this as well. It explains why gold is so highly valued. Because if you think about it, there's no reason for it. We spoke about this at length in other shows as well. But this explains why gold and certainly the elements or metals of the platinum group elements, but specifically gold, is so highly valued. It was always the metal of the gods, always. Okay, it was not a human metal. It was not for us to be used. It was only for the most powerful of humans, who were considered gods, or the gods themselves. All right, let's remember that.
And we were to collect it and feed it to them.
Correct. In fact, if you believe the legends, as it were, or the writings of the Babylonians, the Anunnaki made us to mine that gold for them. Right? This is, again, a very big statement to make, but again...
Well, that's what the Sumerians say.
That's
what it says on the tablets, whether they were the original authors of the tablets or not.
Yeah, but we're not made up. True. All true as far as you can check it for yourselves. Did it happen? I don't know. I wasn't there. Or maybe I was. I don't know. I can't remember it because I'm suffering from reincarnation amnesia. But, okay, so there's a mechanism, it seems, that can bestow a very long life on someone. Now, when we say immortal, Dave and I, we don't mean someone who is invulnerable. All right, there's a big difference there. So
you're just a person who's alive, just like we are, and you could die with a shot to the head or a stake through the heart.
Well, yes.
You could be hit by a car, or you could die of some disease, just like the rest of us.
Yeah, and you probably are in a more robust physical condition than most of us, because there are other side effects of the substance which would make you a more healthy specimen. And again, we hear of these gods being extremely robust women and men, or creatures, right?
We didn't even touch on the mental abilities.
Oh, exactly. And again, Dave, 100% correct. And this is one of Dave's favorite topics. Just quickly guide us through this, and then we'll move on, Dave.
Okay. Well, upon eating this, it is claimed, and I have to say those words because I actually haven't had any, but the sixth greatest mind on the planet did some tests on this with a bunch of people, and it was all documented. And with a brain activity matrix over your head, they showed that the consumption of it would synchronize both hemispheres of the brain by reducing them both down to a common level, and then almost instantly. And then as people consumed more, your brain activity increased until it consumed your entire brain. Your brain functions were accelerated. They said that they likened it to when you've woken up one day and for no reason whatsoever, you can't explain it, but you are firing on all cylinders, you're mentally perfect. Well, that's what it's like all the time. And if it was that movie, Meki, with the fractal zooms,
Yeah, it was called Unlimited, I think, or Limitless. Sorry, Limitless.
Limitless.
Yes.
And that's when a drug company gets hold of it.
Yeah.
And they can't release it because they can't have everyone like that.
Yeah.
Because they show a downside, like it slowly destroys you or something, right?
Yeah. You can't have it in conjunction with alcohol.
Yeah, whatever.
That's true. Sorry, buddy.
That's okay. That's what I'm just sprinkling on my alcohol right now. Yeah. So when I was at school, I made a monatomic lead, and lead isn't too far away from gold.
Mm-hmm.
It's only 3 steps on the periodic table. The steps, I think, from what I remember. Hang on, I've actually got it up here, and where is it?
Welcome to Geek Country.
Yeah, hello.
We have periodic tables on our desktops.
Oh, I do. So, gold has 79 electrons, and lead has 82, and you can actually change lead into gold in a nuclear reactor. It'll strip the electrons away and create gold.
You mean like in the heart of the sun?
Or yes, or in one of your local downtown neighborhood power reactors.
Yeah, all you need is a good bit of fusion, and you're good to go.
Yeah, but the only problem is it costs so much time in the reactor as reactor time.
Oh, yeah.
And it makes it radioactive.
And you look, building a sun is just too hard, right?
Yeah, I'm not doing that again. We'll never speak of that again.
Never.
But anyway, so look, it's important to realize that the gold is this shiny stuff that we're sort of almost pre-programmed to like.
Mm-hmm.
I showed my 2 daughters exactly the same ring, but one was gold and one was shiny. This was in a shop.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, which one do you like? Which one do you want? And they just quietly pointed to gold, and the other one goes, I want the gold one. I said, why not the silver one? And they just looked to me like I was an idiot. Like, what? Why would you even ask us that? It's the gold one, Dad. The gold. And they're only 4 and 6 years old.
Yeah.
We're pre-programmed to like gold.
Yeah. I agree with you, Dave. I agree with you 100%. I do believe it is on a instinctual level. I think it's genetic. I think it's genetic. I really do.
Could be programmed. We don't know.
Yep. 100%.
That's the tinfoil hat bit.
Well, hey, no one has come up with a bad explanation
for it.
Yeah, but if nobody comes up with a bad explanation, I mean, that's really what we're all about as well. Give me a bad explanation. Anyone out there, bring it in, tell us we're foolish, and that's all good. But unless you come up with a better one, guess what? You just have to tolerate our explanation.
Good luck with that.
Okay, so great, thank you, Dave. It was an excellent dissertation and summary of our previous shows. And again, I urge you to go to the notes and or even to listen to the show to recap that for yourself. So there seems to be a mechanism at the very least that seems to be able to bestow immortality. We've now had some more research recently, or that was undertaken. And Dave has kindly sent the links to me as well. We put the links into the show notes, of course. But one is about essentially this hydra. It's a very tiny organism. It's a polyp, essentially, and it's immortal, right? It's mostly stem cell, and it reproduces by having buds, just like a cactus, essentially, right? Except this is an animal, not a plant. And remember this gene? It's called FOXO. All right. It seems to be
about the FOXP gene.
Yep. This is the FOXO, and it seems now in Germany, in Kiel, at university, they did a few studies, especially around the hydra, and there seems to be a FOXO gene that controls this aging process. In fact, in humans, it seems, like 100-year-olds and so forth, we seem to be observing a much more active FOXO gene than in others, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I have to say this. Wasn't there a story in Gilgamesh?
Yes.
About Gilgamesh?
No, it was the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Yeah.
It is the oldest recorded epic that we have from Sumerian times. He was in fact a king. He was a Sumerian king, and he went to find the secret of immortality. okay, and for his friend, and he went to the mountain where the gods lived. Again, we have this imagery of the gods living up high, and he went there because he was a half god. So I think his father was a god, and he thought he had a chance to get some of it for his friend who lay dying, but he didn't. He couldn't. Okay, so the ferryman that took him to the mountain, again, is this island motive as well, told him, well, you know what? It's actually on the bottom of the ocean. Right, Dave?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so 4,000 years ago.
Yep.
That was.
Yeah,
and here we are. We've found the Hydra. And yep. What's special about the Hydra?
In which respect? Sorry.
Well, okay. The Hydra itself, I'll tell you something very special. Is that it gets old, and then gets young again.
Yes. Yes.
And then it produces an offspring like a bud.
Yep.
That grows off it. And then it gets old again, and then it gets young again.
Yep.
Like it never dies. The guy that found it, he just took some samples with his little vacuum thing, took it back to the lab of phytoplankton, and in his little petri dish, he noticed that he was watching them reproduce and documenting what it was, and eventually he noticed. This creature, he never saw them reproduce.
Yep.
He was watching all the other ones, and when he isolated them, he found they seem to get old, and then they turn back to the polyp again and reproduce themselves, and like a DNA strand, then get old again and get young again, and the cycle just continues. And he said his petri dish filled up with these things.
Yep. Interesting enough, jellyfish seem also, like some jellyfish seem to work in a similar fashion, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there are creatures in the ocean that live like that, and there's something very interesting. There's in 1988, Dave, refresh my memory. They found a coral on the ocean floor. Is that right?
Well, yes. Well, it's to do basically with the same thing. This was to do with the immortal jellyfish, but the Hydra and the jellyfish are the same, basically the same thing. Yeah, they found. Well, I think it's two creatures now, the Hydra and the jellyfish.
Yep.
So, but that's what it was, that we finally found it in 1988. So 4,000 years ago, I can't pronounce that fellow's name. It's Utnapishtim.
Utnapishtim.
That's the one. He was the guy 4,000 years ago that told Gilgamesh that the secret to immortality lay on the ocean floor.
Yes.
And it was only in 1988 that we discovered this thing. But I mean, I swear I didn't hear about this immortal jellyfish until I think this year.
Yeah.
And that's some 30 years later.
Yeah, but you can't disseminate this kind of information into the wider audience. You keep it in the journals, in the specific jargon related journals, so nobody else can find their way through it. And then, after a while, you can release some of the information. In fact, it worries me, Dave, that some critical information is being released, because what that means, unfortunately, is that it doesn't really matter anymore.
No, that's exactly right. I'm going to put it like the great villain in a James Bond film.
Mm-hmm.
When the villain has you captured and he divulges his entire plan, that's your end.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And we seem to see that more and more. Of course, this goes both ways. The more and more this information is disseminated, I still do believe we have time to do something about it. The more and more our awareness grows, and the more people wake up. And I think the more people wake up, the less likely our demise is.
Awareness cascade.
It is, and we spoke about that, right? It all comes back to that. This is the great hope. I mean, some Christians refer to it as rapture. Other cultures call it different thing, but it's really the same thing. It is us coming together collectively. Just want to quickly tell you as well that immortals have been with us for a long, long time, or legends of those guys, right? So I don't want to necessarily name them all again, but throughout history, there was, for example, Melchizedek, who lived in the 18th century BC, right? He was a priest, and according to some translation of Hebrews 7:3, which which is the Bible, of course. He was without father or mother, without genealogy, without beginning of days or end of life. Like the Son of God, he remains a priest forever. So in the Bible, you've got references to people that lived forever. There's Tithonus, who in Greek mythology was granted eternal life, but as a cruel punishment, not eternal youth, right? And again, this is something that maybe can be bestowed on someone where you will age, right? Maybe for thousands of years. That would be horrible if you think about it. That'd be a horrible fate. There's John the Apostle, right? And you can interpret the Bible in such a way that it says, well, he will tarry on this earth until the second coming, which means he won't die. Mm-hmm. Sir Galahad, Merlin, Nicholas and Perenelle Flamel of Harry Potter fame. Okay, if you remember that, it was Nicholas Flamel who held the Philosopher's Stone in the very first Harry Potter book. That's actually a true story, if you will, right? I mean, the guy actually existed. And there were two brothers, Nicholas and Perenelle, and they were reputed to have acquired immortality through the creation of the Philosopher's Stone, which Dave and I contend is in fact monoatomic gold. Mm-hmm. All right, that's what we think. And then there's of course the Count of Saint Germain, who was very, very strange. We talked about him in detail. We don't know when he was born. We think he died in 1784, and he's been described as a whole bunch of different things. He was a courtier, he was an adventurer, he was a charlatan, inventor, alchemist, pianist, violinist, and he was also an amateur composer. He achieved great prominence in Europe in the high society in the mid-1700s, right? And a lot of scholars have linked him to mysticism, occultism, secret societies, and various conspiracy theories. However, and this is the interesting thing, it appears that the Count arrived on the scene in Europe as early as 1710, right? Let's just call it that. At that time, he appeared to be in his mid-40s. Okay? The story goes that he always appeared this way. He never seemed to age. So from 1737, some 30 years after that, he was supposedly in Persia studying alchemy. He went to Versailles in 1742, and then in 1743 he was in England for the Jacobite Revolution. And he went back to Edinburgh in 1745. In 1755, he went to India. All right, wow. He went around. I mean, for those days, he traveled a lot. Okay, but then when he came back, he stayed at the Royal Chateau with King Louis the 15th, and he also met Voltaire, who seemed to be very impressed by the man. So Voltaire, the writer, the French writer, and he left France in 1760, and he went to Hague in London. In 1762, he went to Russia and was involved with the revolution there under the pseudonym of Graf Saltykov. He later traveled to Germany and Bavaria.
Hang on. I'm trying to do my maths.
I know.
Okay, so his mid-40s in 1710.
Yep.
And then 50 years later, he'd been 90.
Yep.
He's still getting about. Hey, I don't remember people living that old.
No, and that's the thing. And this is what they keep saying. Supposedly, the Count of Saint-Germain died February 27, 1784. 84, right? But it's still a middle-aged appearance. There's a record of his death and burial. Okay, so he was a very strange guy. He was a very talented musician. He spoke a lot of languages. He even shared his work with Tchaikovsky.
Wow.
Yep, and two of his compositions are now in the British Museum. He performed the harpsichord for Frederick the Great, the Prussian emperor.
The poor Prussian emperor. The harpsichord's a terrible instrument to listen to.
I kind of like it, the Addams Family. It's sort of cool. And he also, as I said, he spoke many languages. He had knowledge of Sanskrit, Chinese, and Arabic. Now, Sanskrit is a stem language from which many modern languages derive. Mm-hmm. And in fact, many of the languages that derive from it are now dead. And in fact, Sanskrit is a mother or father language for both German and the Hindu language, interestingly enough. He also spoke Swedish, Portuguese, French, Italian, German, Spanish, and Russian flawlessly. He also could paint. He also had some very strange habits, and this is important, guys. Some people claim that he never ate in public, and that he would drink a special tea frequently.
Yeah.
And he also made strange comments about his age. He would speak of times long since past as if he'd been there. Okay? He reportedly told an acquaintance who had made a comment that he must be more than 100 years old, and that it was not impossible. So he's just a very interesting character when we discuss immortality, and he may very well be one of the survivors of the cataclysms, right? And he may not work with the elite, or he may, I don't know, but it seems he doesn't. He may just see. The thing is this: I don't think we're being ruled by this cohesive, coherent, hermetic elite. I think there are factions within that too. For the most part, I think their goal is to remain in power and promote the status quo. But I do believe they would have the same shortcomings or flaws as we do, and they would quarrel and so forth. But I think that there would be others as well, and maybe others that have discovered the secret of immortality along the way, right? So if someone discovered it these days, and they kept living for thousands of years, they might not necessarily become one of the elite, one of the gods of ancient times. They just would live as long as they do as well. I mean, given enough time, you might actually unmask the elite, right? If you had time.
Can I jump in? I want to say that if you could live long enough, you could learn every language there was.
Right, exactly.
And you know what? Anyone who can speak, you said Swedish, Portuguese, French, Italian, German, Spanish, and Russian.
Yep.
Flawlessly, as well as Chinese and Arabic.
Yep.
That Chinese alone takes a long time to learn. It's one of the most complicated languages that I've ever heard.
And I'm trying, trust me.
Yeah, I bet, right? Arabic again, just forget it. I can imagine the French, Italian, and Spanish. Swedish again. That's insanely complicated, and so is Russian. All of them have different grammatic as well. So all the words are swapped around. That's some complicated red. I think alone, if we were like a cold case team looking at this one guy, that would sell a lot.
Yeah,
towards our case, yeah.
100%. Think about it this way as well, Dave. Right? Just to survive for this long, this would become a necessity for you. You would have to be able to learn these languages, and maybe if he is taking the specialty or the white gold powder or whatever, it has this rejuvenating effect or effect on his brain as well, right? Maybe it does make him smarter. Maybe he becomes his neurons are firing better. Who knows? But the point is, learning another language, or in fact, learning the evolving languages, because as you live, right, language evolves. If you look at Shakespeare's times, the English then was quite different and a lot more closely related to German, in fact, than it is today. And this evolution would just, I guess, be natural to you, right? Because this is what you just, as you live, you just keep learning it, and you change your habits and such, and your speaking patterns.
Yeah, look, I think that you'd have to move around. If you, let's put this fellow in the basket of not in the elite, right?
Yes, agreed.
I reckon there'd be these Doctor Who types of people, right, who can skirt around the outside of society, keeping themselves underground enough but popular enough to have a little bit of visibility, but still, keep your head, swim silently, keep yourself underground, move from different societies to keep doing what you want to do, right? Just enough to stay anonymous enough so only those people that see you in that age group will see you in that age group. Right?
That is exactly right. Yeah.
When it becomes a little unreasonable for you to be, you're at a retirement home visiting your friends, your life friends that you've just seen age and die, right? You can't. You're going to just keep moving, keep going, and keep finding it. What I mean, I think that would be an awesome thing to be able to go around and just live that life of what he did.
Yeah. Oh, I think it'd be. I agree with you, Dave. I think it would be, and I think to some extent, it's also quite tragic. I mean, it depends on your psychological makeup. But imagine, right? You fall in love and marry and have children and all these wonderful things, and you don't realize yet you're immortal, or you will be immortal, or whatever it might be. And then you see your partner die, and then you see your children die, and their children, and their children, and so on and so forth, right?
You couldn't do it.
No, right? You would have to move away. You would have to move around. You couldn't be around the same people. Maybe you come back after 100, 200, 500 years. Who knows? And maybe you look up your great grandkids and see how they're doing, right? But it would take a psychological toll. And then there's some very interesting treatments in literature and also in movies of this theme. The Man from Earth is a very good movie, science fiction movie. Don't expect any high tech effects or anything like that. This is really all about the story, and others as well. The other treatments of immortality in literature, which are fascinating as well. Jonathan Swift certainly wrote about it in Gulliver's Travels. So people have thought about this, of course, in literature and in reality, and to be immortal would require you to be quite unique, I guess, in your psychological makeup. It would take a lot. I think it would take a strong person to live that long, if you know what I mean.
I just want to know where you get the money from.
Oh, but that would be easy, wouldn't it? Because, I mean, you put something in a bank. In fact, after making money would just be a game, because you would be so skilled at everything. And you probably put some money aside. And in modern times, it's a lot easier. You just put a dollar in a bank, wait 1,000 years, and you're a billionaire. Right? I mean,
That's true.
I'm being flippant, but I mean that's the principle, right? And even an absentee landlord, I mean, you could come back as your own grandson, checking on your investments. I mean, who would know any different? And you would get quite good at these things. But
I really like that, and I do you like the Doctor Who reference?
I love it, yeah, because I think you're absolutely right. It would be, I mean, this particular Count of Saint-Germain, who doesn't seem to have done anything bad and seem to be even a progressive force, seems to be the helping kind of immortal, right?
Yeah. And that's quite a contrast to who we're going to talk about on the other side of the break.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely. And look, after we come back from the break, we'll also talk about just going back a little bit further in history and how the ancients, or the people of forerunners like the Egyptians and Sumerians, how they believed that people, specifically kings, ruled for tens of thousands of years. They lived for very long times, right? And we will also speculate on some more far out theories and personalities around here. We're going to discuss David Icke for a little bit. You might find that interesting. I do. I've got all his books, and I love to hear him talk. He's a very engaging speaker. And we have tried to get him on the show. I have had zero correspondence. So there was no. So if anyone knows David Icke who's listening to this, we would love to talk to you, because you really have changed my outlook on a lot of things with the information that you've presented. Right? I'm fascinated by the material that you've compiled, and I would love to talk to you. I think you're misunderstood. I think people paint you as as something that you're not. Specifically, I guess the certain lobbies in Washington. But yeah, we would love the chance to speak to you. I mean, we've had awesome guests on in the past, Dave. Right? We've had some real gets, I think, and it's been largely your work, big names on the show, and we're going to do that in the future again as soon as the new year rolls around. And
yeah, I've got 15 names lined up. Hopefully we can start some dialogue with them. I've asked them, and only one has declined, saying he's not doing interviews at the moment.
Okay, and that's cool.
That's pretty good. The rest are looking promising, and we're gonna try to attack this, the consumption of knowledge.
Yes.
For this in this next year, with fervor,
yes.
Right? I should say fervor. But I want to know as much as I can, so I can know that there's no end to the questions.
No, I agreed, and this is really wonderful as well. I mean, the more questions we ask, the more answers we get out of those questions. The more questions we have.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a Russian babushka doll. You just open them up and keep opening them up.
What's inside that? What's inside that?
That's right. And I would love to get to the bottom of the bottom, which would be great. But that's quite far away. We've got another minute or so in the first hour.
Mm-hmm.
But we would also like to get some of the old guests back, right, Dave? Just to get an update, especially Jose Escamilla. I would love to talk to again. His documentaries, I think, are brilliant. the Moon documentaries. Guys, if you get a chance, I know he charges for it, but it's well worth paying to see it, and it's not much. It really isn't. I mean, okay, Dave and I were privileged. We had a free look at, even pre-release look at his documentary, and I was blown away. Dave, I'm sure you felt the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. The Jose Escamilla and Giorgio Tsoukalos, the hair, we're booking those guys within the next few weeks, hopefully.
Nice.
Giorgio was really he was a tremendous interview, and he's a great fellow, and I love his work. So look, that's probably going to be. I think the music's coming. So
yep, that is.
Yep. And we'll catch you on the other side of the break.
Beautiful.
Thanks, guys.
See ya. Hi, and welcome back to Shiny Side Out on freedomslips.com. We are part of Revolution Radio. We are halfway through show number 46, I think it is. And we're talking about, I guess, more on connecting the dots. So immortality, the specific topic today. And this is Listener Funded Radio. If you like what you hear, please go to freedomslips.com and push the donate button. Your donation is greatly appreciated and helps us run this station. So, Dave, let's launch into it if you like. We had a great first half, I think. A lot of activity in the chat room as well.
Oh, yeah, it's awesome,
isn't it?
Thanks, Tones. Thanks, Vaubear.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I mean, the chat. Look, if you want to get involved, you can. I mean, we make reference to the chat for most shows. We will answer the questions that are posted in the chat as well, and it's very friendly. It's a non-hate environment, guys. It really is. So if you're feeling a bit shy maybe or whatever, no need. It's all friends. It's like a family atmosphere. Okay, so
and you can also be anonymous. You don't have to be you. You can create an avatar.
Yep. And what is the avatar's name, Dave? What do we call the avatars?
Schmoopy.
That's right, of Seinfeld fame. No, you're Schmoopy. No, you're Schmoopy. Oh, you're making me sick.
Hey, I forgot in the first hour we were talking about it being Australia Day. Okay, so that was yesterday.
Yes.
And but it's still Australia Day in the US right now, right here, right now. And I want to say to all those expats over in the US, yeah, Aussie, Aussie, Aussie.
Oi, oi, oi.
Awesome.
Yes. Now that's the whole Australian thing. I'm sure you've heard it, and it goes on. It's really good.
Every time we win a medal.
Yes. Yes. Yes, which is a lot for a country our size.
Yeah.
And can I just say one thing, Dave? I wanted to say it in the first. Please support street entertainment, guys.
Why?
Today, I walked through the city, and I saw street entertainers, and I donated, $5-10 here and there. I find they're fantastic. Jugglers and fire breathers and street magicians. I don't care what they are. It's an art that we should support. It's spontaneous. It is nice to have that, like some kind of entertainment which doesn't come out of a box, right? In fact, where you pay whatever you think you should pay, right? And measured on the level of your entertainment. So please support street performers. I know this is totally out of left field, but it's just one of the causes dear to my heart.
Wow, I've just been T-boned by that. I always give my children some gold coins to go and take over. If my kids are fascinated by it, I'll do that.
Yeah, brilliant, dude. Love that.
Yeah, and that they always do something special for little kids putting the coins in too. So whether it's that silver person painted in silver doing the statue thing, or it's some musicians. There was even some native Australians with the didgeridoo down at Circular Quay.
Oh, nice.
Where we used to work. Mickey and I used to work there. And I went past recently with my kids, and they even said thank you through the didge.
Oh, awesome!
Right, so the hot music's going, he's playing it, he's entertaining all maybe a group of people around, like maybe 30 or 40 people. And when my kids brought it over, he still was able to, while he was entertaining everyone, still be able to say thank you through the didgeridoo. Awesome.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
And then look again, maybe you feel differently. Dave and I really, really do enjoy the street performers. A dying art, but I think we shouldn't let it die. Speaking of dying or not dying, we're talking about immortals. Another great segue.
I love this segue. Segue champion.
Woohoo! That's what we are.
I'm gonna look up Segway championships and see if we can get some of our stuff in there.
When it comes to segways and platitudes, I just coined another one. You know, there's a Chinese cultural revolution going on right now, right? It's different to the one that Mao started. So what I said, the current Chinese cultural revolution is not driven by Mao, but by money. So you can actually use it as a bumper sticker if you like, right?
Oh.
That's not a segue. That's just a platitude. So without
Oranges. Immortality. There we go.
Egyptian. And also Sumerian and Babylonian, I guess, myths and legends speak about kings, and specifically in the case of the Egyptians, pre-dynastic kings, the reign of the gods they called it, which first occurred 36,620 years before Menes. Menes is was a king. Philosopher king, if you will, who lived in 3050 BC, so 5,000 years ago. So we're talking about 41,000 years ago, right? So that's when the reign of the gods first appeared. And it appears that the first Egyptian god, by the name of Ptah, reigned for thousands of years, okay? It started 36,625 years before Menes. And after that, other kings came and they reigned for tens of thousands of years. But these are specific individuals that reigned for tens of thousands of years. Okay, so that's coming down from the Egyptians and their king lists and pre-dynastic reign of the gods. Sumerians have a very similar list, if you will. Giving various mythical antediluvian. Antediluvian here refers to pre-flood kings, and gives them reigns of several tens of thousands of years as well. The first Sumerian king, Alulim, at Eridu, is described as reigning for 28,800 years, followed by several other kings of similar periods. In total, these pre-flood kings ruled for 241,000 years. From the time, and this is interesting, when the kingship was lowered from heaven to the time when the flood swept over the land. So,
wow.
Yes. So both the Egyptians and the Sumerians, arguably some of the oldest cultures on the planet, talk about kings that reigned for tens of thousands of years. You could say, oh, well, maybe they didn't know what they're talking about, or maybe they got their timing wrong. Well, yeah, maybe, but maybe they didn't, okay? You have to, I think, remain skeptical either way. It's easy to dismiss it because it doesn't fit into our, event horizon these days. It doesn't make any sense from our rational point of view. Oh, no one lives that long. Well, why not? Why not? To a fly that lives one day, we must seem like immortals.
Completely.
It's always a matter of the point of view that you personally inhabit at any given time. Everything is relative. If nothing else, Einstein has taught us that. So just because we live a certain length of time on average, or live a certain way, in fact, doesn't mean it's always been like that or will always be like that. Okay, so we need to break free of this human-centric, anthropomorphic, or this view that we are the measure of all things. We're not. We've spoken about this. Sorry, I don't want to digress too much, but it's an important point to make. And Dave, I'll get you to back me up.
I totally agree.
So we live on a planet which is arbitrarily going around the sun at a certain amount of time, which is roughly 365 days. We call that a year. It's absolutely meaningless, except for us. Okay, we've broken the year down into days, weeks, months, into hours, minutes, and so forth, right? Again, these measurements of time are entirely arbitrary. We say a circle has 360 degrees. Why? Why not 500?
Or why not one?
Why not one, right? Again, entirely arbitrary. All our measures are, in fact, our size. Well, we talk about the times when giants lived in the world and roamed the land. Impossible. We're between 5 and 7 foot today, and that's how much there is. That's it. There's nothing else. Well, really? I mean, this is very, very short-sighted and blinkered view of the world. there's so many things that we just don't know. It would be foolish to assume that everything that we know right now is the truth, and the way we live and the way we are physically and how long we live and our place in the universe, that's what it is. It's foolish to say that. And this is where we fall down in most time. All right, we take ourselves as the measure of all things. Let's not do that. Right? Let's not do that. Why not take the elephant as the measure for all things, or the blue whale, or the brontosaur? Right? The brontosaur was like 5 stories tall. Well, then he will look at us and go, "Oh, you can't exist. You're too small to exist."
Or the Hydra.
Or the Hydra, who lives forever, right? You look at us, you're like, you don't even count. I'm here forever. How long are you for? How long? I don't even know what that means. 80 years. What is that? Right?
Exactly. So I'm glad you didn't digress.
Sorry, I had to. But you look, but to go back on track, and of course, even back then, scholars criticized the Babylonians and the Egyptians and so forth for their king lists and the time that they ruled, because they were as blinkered as we are, and they're only 2,500 years away from us. Cicero, for instance, or Diodorus Siculus, right? They're in time, they're only 2,500 years removed from us. So their point of view is not that different from ours. And they said, let us scorn the Babylonians, the men whose records, as they themselves assert, cover a period of 470,000 years. Let us scorn them. Let us, or Diodorus, a man can scarcely believe the Babylonians, for they reckon that down to Alexander's crossing over into Asia, it has been 473,000 years since they began in early times to make their own observation of the stars. Mm-hmm. Interestingly, though, despite these criticisms, some ancient Greeks, contemporary to those guys, most notably Alexander Polyhistor and Proclus, believed the Babylonian kings were hundreds of thousands of years old, and that the Babylonians dated their creation to roughly 400 to 200,000 years before their own time, which, again, is coming directly from the Anunnaki tablets. That's the story they tell, roughly.
I put a lot of credence to those tablets because they were created such a long time ago, before all of our conceptions of the way the life should be, that it lends so much credence to its authenticity, that it no longer begs any questions.
Yeah, and
for me, I think it stands higher, and I trust it more than because that's still the same text.
Yep.
Rather than the Bible, which looks like it mirrors the stories.
Yes, it does. You're right, Dave. Mm-hmm. A lot of the Bible content can be traced back to other sources. I know people will argue, until they're blue in the face, but you can see it very clearly. And I just want to put this out there. I mean, why not? Why can't the tablets have been copies of even older documents or stories? They were put down at that particular time, in a medium which was relatively impervious to the climatic changes, right?
It was stable. They're still around now.
Yeah, they were fired clay tablets. So if you know about pottery, that kind of stuff can last for a very long time. Much better than paper or what we use today. Certainly not a bad way to transmit information over oceans of time, if you will.
Well, they even had a printing press where they'd carved out the news onto a cylindrical wooden roller, and they rolled it across the wet clay, and they just trimmed the edges and they fired them, and that was like a printing press.
You're right, exactly right, Dave. And since they may not have had paper, this is a very elegant and efficient way to do it. So they weren't dummies. This is really the point we're trying to make. They're also quite astute astronomers, and they didn't make a distinction between astronomy and astrology. So maybe they knew something that we don't. Okay, something to ponder here as well. The sciences were quite advanced. You might have heard of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, right?
Oh yeah.
These are gardens which are artificial. We would call them terrace gardens, which were irrigated and looked after quite
fastidiously.
Absolutely, and beautiful apparently, but of course they no longer exist. So we're not dealing with people living in caves here. Right? These are quite high advanced civilization for their time. Maybe even more highly advanced than we give them credit for. Not as highly, I think, as we have been in the past, but certainly very, very highly. And obviously they had enough leisure time to create these tablets. They weren't a hand-to-mouth civilization. They had created a division of labor they had created different classes of people that took different roles in a structured society. It's a big achievement.
I've got a question. How about, why don't we tie this up to the Bible, yeah?
No,
what references are there in the Bible to people living?
Now, interestingly enough, this ties in directly with the Sumerian and Babylonian legends. They are all pre-flood, antediluvian, so meaning prior to Noah and his ark. Mm-hmm. So none of them afterwards, interestingly. Okay, so something changed after the flood event that made us live a lot shorter. So there was Methuselah at 969 years, Jared at 962, Noah himself at 950, Adam, wow. The original Adam, at 930 years.
How many?
930.
Wow.
But Methuselah, arguably the oldest, hence, you're old as Methuselah. That's where the saying comes from.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Kenan, 910 years, Shem, 600 years, Lamech, 770 years, and so on. So there are quite a number of people prior to the flood that almost lived to 1,000 years. Now imagine what you could accomplish in 1,000 years if you had 1,000 years, right? So that's like another.
It's like 30 lifetimes.
Well, essentially, yeah. I mean, right now you're lucky to go to 100, right? Like 10% of your potential, potentially. So
potentially. Thinking about at the time, the expected life longevity of a person was about the mid-30s.
Yep. Oh yeah. Again, correct, Dave. I mean, because obviously the advances also we think in medicine and clean food and water weren't as they are today, and people didn't quite live as long. You could be a grandfather by the time you're 30. Mm-hmm. So you probably have children much earlier, just to make sure that you have someone to survive you at some point. So this is all very interesting, right? And then I want to jump to some other cultures. We've been a little European centric here to some extent, Middle Eastern, right?
I know where we're going with this one.
But they're very, very similar mythologies in China and India regarding immortals, right?
Yeah, we can't talk about immortals and exclude them, yeah?
Absolutely, 100%. Xu Fu's first expedition to the Mount of the Immortals, right? In Chinese mythology, the mountain is often said to be the base for the 8 immortals. And I want you to remember that number. It'll become important. Or at least that's where they travel to have a banquet, as well as the magician Angi Sheng. So this mountain is a very special place, and everything on that mountain apparently appears white, right? Again, maybe a reference to white gold powder. I'm just putting it out there. The palaces are made from gold and platinum specifically, okay? And jewelry grows on trees. Now that might be fanciful, but the gold and platinum references are interesting. There is no pain and there's no winter. There are rice bowls and wine glasses that never become empty, no matter how much people eat or drink from them. Again, if you're thinking about nanotechnology and replicator to some extent what we're doing today, and even three-dimensional printing, and not so far-fetched as a high-tech description. And there are magical fruits growing in Penglai, which is, the mountain, the name of the mountain, that can heal any disease, grant eternal youth, and even raise the dead. Now, Dave, magical fruits growing on trees.
That takes me back to a monatomic element reference.
And that would be...
What? Monatomic gold.
Right. But not only that. Think about the Bible for a second and the expulsion from the Garden of Eden. Mm-hmm. We were kicked out of the Garden of Eden, not because we ate from the tree of knowledge. That was the offending reason, of course. No, we were kicked out so we could not eat from the tree of life. That must have had magical fruits, because God said, well, if, Adam and Eve eat from that tree, after having eaten from the tree of knowledge, they'll become like us and never die.
They can't be like us. They're meant to be humans.
Correct. So obviously another reference to the gods or God having a special substance, in this case, I guess like a fruit, if you will, that confers immortality or extreme longevity.
And a special design for us.
Correct. And every mythology says that we were created in the image of the Creator. I don't care what culture you look at, we were all created in the image of that particular god or those particular gods. And that's also important to remember, right? So that's what the Chinese believe. Remember the 8 immortals though. India, very, very similar, okay? Amrit, the elixir of life, or Amrita, which we might call mana, or you can call it ambrosia. And again, there are phonetic similarities or linguistic similarities in these words. Amrita, ambrosia, right? Sounds strange. Mana even, where you've got the MA sounds replicated. Or mifs, I think the Egyptian called it, right?
Mafkat.
Mafkat, right? MA again. So whenever you have this many coincidences in linguistics, you know, this probably goes back to a much, much older source word.
Yeah, so the source of the word was, the same.
Yeah, so there were certainly AM or MA kind of sounds in it, right? That we can pretty much say for certain. Now, the legend has it at early times when the inception of the world had just taken place, evil demons had gained strength. This was seen as a threat to the gods who feared them. So these gods, including Varuna, the god of rain, Vayu, god of wind, and so forth, went to seek advice and help from the 3 primary gods, according to the Hindus, Vishnu and Brahma and Shiva. And they suggested that Amrit, or Amrita, could only be gained from the Samudra Manthan, which means the churning ocean, right? We've spoken about the ocean connection here as well, right? So it appears that in legend, there's knowledge preserved that this elixir of life can be extracted out of the ocean. And I don't know how, maybe you can extract it out of the Hydra creatures. Maybe it is just the monatomic gold that is present within the ocean itself. I don't know. The point is that a lot of things are pointing to these things, okay? And you have a connection, again, back into the, I guess, more Western mythology as well. It is many practices of alchemy pursued it. Okay, every alchemist, his highest goal was to create the philosopher's stone. It was also said to be able to create life, so raise the dead. Okay, this is also an important connection here. It is related to the myths of Thoth and Hermes Trismegistus, all of whom in various tales are said to have drunk the white drops, liquid gold maybe, and thus achieved immortality. It is even mentioned in one of the Nag Hammadi texts, you know, the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Wow.
Yeah, and each of the Chinese gods or immortals had their own specific immortality potion. Okay, and because we're here now, they're all connected with flying machines. Each Chinese immortal or god had his or her own flying chariot. The Indian gods and heroes had their own Vimanas, flying machine. Okay. Hermes Trismegistus is said to have had a flying machine. Okay. We found an aeronautically correct plane in one of the tombs in Egypt. When I say that, I mean it was fashioned out of wood, so it was a sailing plane. Okay, and if you threw it, it would just sail through the air like a paper plane today. Only, of course, you know, much more steadily because it's made out of very light wood. So
but it was aerodynamically accurate.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah, exactly. And
it wasn't fashioned to look like a bird.
No, I mean that was going. I mean they did put like a bird's head on it. Yeah, but the wings and importantly the tail were stabilizer, or the tail was acting as a stabilizer with cross sections like we see on planes today. So it would guarantee a more or less smooth gliding plane. You know, not like a bird. Like a bird flaps its wings. I'm talking about a fixed.
And a bird doesn't have a vertical tail.
Correct.
And it has ailerons in its tail. Its tail is able to bend and move, but we make a fixed wing aircraft with ailerons adjacent to the tail at 90 degrees.
Exactly. That's exactly right, Dave. And that was demonstrated, which leads me to a slide of the course thing here. But I don't know if you're familiar with the little gold models that were found in Peru and other Peru. So essentially, these are little gold models. They'll fit in the palm of your hand, and for all the world, they look like delta wing aircraft. They're not birds. They're not bugs. and I'm saying this because there's an obvious cockpit, there's an obvious delta wing shape to the wings, right?
Then a gap.
And a gap, that's right. And then there's the tail section, which comes up vertically and which has stabilizing rudders.
Yep.
Okay, so that's what they look like. The pictures, you just go on the net and Google it, and they're made from gold. And nobody has really disputed that they're as old as they say they are. Okay, that's key here. Nobody says they're hoaxes or fakes that were made in modern times. What people do say, though, is, oh, no. They're just, and this is important, they're just stylized.
Stylized insects.
Yeah, which means
birds.
Right? So they're insects, but they're abstracted insects. Well, no. Most insects have sets of wings.
And they have 2 pairs.
That's right. They don't have any rudder. They don't have a tail section. There's no cockpit in an insect that I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that was just a little aside here, which again gives you a connection to much greater technology which must have once existed, be it from somewhere else or native or maybe a mixture of both. I don't know. Point is, and Dave and I, we're now hovering into the maybe even interdimensional intervention theory because of experiences that Dave had, and I think he will share with us a little later.
Yeah.
So bear all of these things in mind, right? This is important stuff, interesting stuff. And just before I go on, there's one more thing I need to tell you. I had a discussion with someone I consider quite intelligent and smart, and he asked me, well, Mackie, why would I believe your BS over everybody else's BS? And that was a very good question. And I said to him, you know what? Don't. Make up your own mind. Because, but I choose not to be interested in these things. Well, that's a choice that you're making. That's fine. But I can't really talk to you now because you choose not to want to know this on your own. So whatever I say becomes irrelevant. So I'm hoping that most of you guys will take up our challenge and look up these things for yourselves and come to your own conclusions. Because these are the conclusions Dave and I come to, backed up by other people as well to some extent. But do make up your own mind. So.
We're bringing this to you from maybe hundreds of, maybe possibly thousands of people that have been researching this information and bringing this stuff to the surface. Mm-hmm. Clearly, we can't make determinations on things that haven't been presented yet. But as we're creeping along with this information, it only takes one person, like I'm going to say again, in a cold case scenario where you've just got a bunch of information and suddenly someone goes, hey, hang on, I think I've got it. If you do this, this, and this is what they did. And then suddenly you've got a case.
Yes.
Right? And that's a case provable in court to convict someone for the rest of their life. Right? They've convicted people on less information we're bringing you. What we're trying to say is, dude, listen, this is important.
Yeah. And see, no, I want to support you, Dave. You're 100% correct. A lot of cases are built on circumstantial evidence. And I think we have some really strong physical evidence, right?
Yeah, well, the physical evidence is all around us, and it's in ancient tech and ancient buildings and ancient documents, all telling the same story. And these were geographically separated cultures that didn't talk to each other.
Yep.
They didn't have the internet.
No,
I mean, even 30 years ago, I didn't have a mobile phone.
Yeah.
Right? We didn't really talk to each other except for, on pre-planned, and maybe random phone calls.
Yep.
And sending letters in the 1800s to people. But we're talking about people that couldn't commute to different countries. They couldn't collude to bring the same information out.
Yep.
And leave it behind for us to find.
That's right.
That's the most important part of this. Yep. And that science holding back their definition of how old humanity is and technology is clearly keeping stuff from us because, we're just about to get into this next section, and I think this is going to bring more out. And let's just roll, Mickey.
Yeah. No. Look. Okay. Look. And since we speak about old, one of the oldest secret societies in the world is meant to be called NUM, N-U-M, right? Oh, okay. Well, what does that mean? It means 9 unknown men. Now, and it is specifically men. Some claim it is a council of 7 rather than 9, and that's my opinion as well, but that's neither here nor there. The Chinese believed there were 8 immortals, remember?
Well, that's the number you asked us to remember.
That's right. Again, a small number. But the point is that it is claimed that the number of individuals controlling many, if not all aspects of our lives is very small indeed, and doesn't have to be very, very big. It is possible to entertain such a small number because of the pyramidal and compartmentalized structure of general society and even secret societies. So if you think about society in general, Dave, right? I mean, most people would probably crowd in the middle somewhere, like in a pyramid, right? Very few people would have a lot of power and knowledge, right? And even fewer people would have absolute power. And that's just the way we are built. And there's very few rich people. It's not like there's like 2 poor people and then you've got a billion billionaires. It's more like you've got 2 billionaires, right? Right? I mean, this is what it really looks like. I mean, this is not made up. That's what we live in. That's the world.
Yeah, the front line. It's the same structure of any business.
Yeah.
You have 1 million people on a front line, a couple of managers that manage your groups of people, and it may be a tier above them, and then you've got an executive group that report directly to the CEO or owner, and then the owner or the CEO will have a directorship or a board that he reports to. So that's like a governing council for the corporation.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And guess what? Hey, that looks like the same structure.
It is the same structure. And you know what the funny
it works in a business, and it works where we are.
Yeah, it works in government. It works in every aspect of life. All our organizations are organized in that particular fashion. And you know what's funny, Dave? You just did something very interesting. You said that the CEO or the guy in charge of the company or whatever is reporting into a board. You're 100% correct. But you know, guys, what's happening these days? There are a lot of people on the same people on different boards all across the world. So you might have a 50 to 60% overlap on different boards. So what you really have, you've got a very small number of board members controlling a very large portion of the economy.
Oh, see, now, yeah, I've actually talked to some board members who are on a number of boards. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right? Now, if you parlay that into more common terms, then it becomes very clear that these interlocking mechanisms cannot just be used for economic leadership, but cultural or societal or governmental leadership as well. And if you look at the American politicians, specifically in the Bush administration, you will find that a lot of them, specifically Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld, were in fact captains of industry or members of boards of large companies. Dick Cheney was the CEO, if I'm not mistaken, of Halliburton. And you know?
Oh no, we've mentioned it on the show. Finally, we've said Halliburton.
It had to be said, right? So there's an incestuous relationship between business and government in America now. Something that Eisenhower warned of in his parting address to the American people. He said, "We must be ever vigilant and must ensure that the enormous power," and I'm paraphrasing, "that lies with the industrial military complex doesn't come to rule our lives." He warned us, and it has come to pass.
We're in that. We're living it right now.
We are absolutely. We are in a war economy. Well, you are in America, but this is only a small aspect of the bigger picture. I mean, now think about that on global terms, and think of the power that is wielded by the few, specifically banking institutions and whatnot. So let's quickly go back to the 9 unknown men. It was, according to legend, founded by Ashoka the Great, the Indian ruler who converted to Buddhism after the Kalinga War. Now, I personally believe this is a lot older than that, this particular power configuration, or maybe it was an additional one, because don't forget, we believe that many cultures and civilizations that reached our level have existed in the past, and maybe in each one of them, a council of immortals somehow crystallized, and maybe those factions have united or fighting each other, I don't know. But we shouldn't just think that this happened only once. It, in fact, might be happening right now, right? There might be people that are very, very powerful, having research engines going to figure out how to become personally immortal. And they might form their own councils. And, you know, the other councils that exist might try to either absorb them or exterminate them. I don't know. But the point is, this is a very fluid kind of environment, I think. So essentially, what happened, the ruler felt, Ashoka the Great that is, to maintain peace, the technology should be kept hidden from the evil men. So he formed a council of these 9 scholars and gave them the responsibility of performing high researches and keeping it underground until required to save humanity from extinction. Now this is...
Oh, that sounds like underground military bases. Listen to those words in current context.
You're right, Dave. Isn't that fascinating?
Wow. Keep going.
Some versions of the story include an additional motivation for the emperor to conceal scientific knowledge. Remnants of the Rama Empire, an Indian version of Atlantis, which according to Hindu scripture was destroyed by advanced weaponry 15,000 years ago. Theories have also begun to surface claiming that Rama and Atlantis might have had war using nuclear technology and destroyed each other. I'll point you to our discussion of Mohenjo-Daro and this massive circular crater in India and the glassy sands in the deserts.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, among conspiracy theorists, which is us, the 9... Hello. The 9 Unknown is often cited as one of the oldest and most powerful secret society in the world. I would agree. But again, I don't know if it's 9, 7, or 8 or whatever. But as I said, it's a small number. Theosophists also believe the 9 to be a real organization that is working for the good of the world. Again, it may very well be possible depending on the goals and depending on how many different factions there are, right? They're believed to have great power. They're believed to be ascended masters and to have no contact with the outer world. But apparently there are a few instances where they had contact with humans such as Pope Sylvester II, interestingly enough, as well as Yersin, one of Pasteur and Deroux's closest collaborators. Okay? So these guys were meant to have been given something by these 9 unknown men to help them. The Pope was meant to have been given a bronze head, which answered in yes or no. So like an oracle, if you will. So should I do this? No. Should I do yes? No, and so forth. Like he had a voyage to India, so he did go to India. This Pope, okay, and supposedly he came back with this bronze head. And Yersin seems to have visited Madras, also in India, in 1890, and following the instructions he received, was able to prepare a serum against cholera and the plague. All right, now this is. Again, it is out there, guys, but it's in our information now. Modern Indian scientists such as Jagdish Chandra Bose were also believed to be in contact or even be a member of the 9. But there's no documentation that can prove it either way. So these are all just rumors, more or less. Believers in the 9 also point to the mysterious Delhi Iron Pillar, which is said to have been constructed at a time before the technology to create it existed in common circulation. So the Delhi Iron Pillar has never rusted. Sat there for 1,000 years, maybe longer, and it's not rusting. Remember, Dave? We spoke about that.
Yeah, it contains chlorine.
Yeah, ancient tech, right? No idea how they did it.
Yeah, we don't even use that technique today.
No idea. Now,
maybe we should.
Maybe we should, buddy. Maybe we should. Now, each of the 9 is supposedly responsible for a book. Like a single tome of knowledge. I don't know if it's a scroll or a book or whatever, right? Maybe even just tablets. I really don't know. There's one on propaganda and psychological warfare. Another book on physiology, which also is believed to be the basis for all martial arts, or specifically judo. Microbiology. Alchemy. Communication, including communication with extraterrestrials. Hello?
That's what I say. They don't answer me either.
Right? Gravitation. Now, interestingly, and this is for Dave, Book 6 is said to contain the instructions necessary to build a Vimana, sometimes referred to as the ancient UFOs of India. Well, it's not really an unknown flying object because we know what it is. It's a Vimana. Mm-hmm. 7, cosmology. 8, light. And 9, interestingly, sociology, including rules concerning the evolution of societies and how to predict their downfall. If you are avid science fiction readers, you might be reminded of Future History by Asimov, Foundation, and very similar themes here. Okay, so this is what we think. Okay, now we've told you a whole bunch of stuff, but why is this important? Why did we have this recap? We needed to bring home to you that, hey, immortality is a possibility, and hey, maybe there are guys that are immortal out there, right? And women as well, for that matter. And more importantly, maybe we also have to show you that it doesn't take too many people to control the world. In fact, I'm just going to jump here, Dave, to remember the little diagram. There's actually a great diagram. It's going to be part of the show notes. I'm going to post it into the chat, which shows you who really runs the world.
Oh, this is amazing.
It is, Dave. There's no better word for it, right? So if you look at the diagram, right? So if you just click on the link, and I'll describe it for you. So essentially, what it looks like is a how can I put this best? 1 second. Here we go.
I know the police have a very similar thing that tracks people's communications.
Yeah, that's right.
They do.
So essentially, it's a circle. Imagine a circle, right? And it's a in the middle of the circle, you've got 60 people, men and women. Very few women, a lot of men, and they're named. So you can look at the names of them, and they're all members of the Bilderberg Group. Okay, and all of those members of the Bilderberg Group are connected in some way or another to all the power structures on the planet. Now let me say that very slowly. So if you look at the circle, and I really urge you to look at it, these 60 Bilderberg members are connected, or together connect to all the power structures, to the US State Department, to the US Commerce Department, to the Foreign Policy Office, to the Daily Telegraph, to the New York Times, to Disney, to Novell, to Delta Dow Jones, to MMC, to
Siemens, McDonald's, Ford.
Yes, sir.
Dow Jones. You're right. Everything you've ever known.
Yes, sir. And these are people that are either members of the boards or in high positions of decision-making power in these government offices, in these commercial entities, in these philanthropic entities and charities as well. Okay, and there are 60 of them. 60 controlling the majority of the world's commerce and governments. 60. Now imagine if you had a council of 7, 8, or 9, or even 10, right, that controlled the world. All you really would have to do is to control these 60. Okay, people like George Soros, like Henry Kravis, Eric Schmidt. Okay, these are all Bilderberg members I'm mentioning now. Okay, Donald E. Grant, the Rockefellers, James Wolfensohn. Okay, Richard Holbrooke. These should all be ringing bells.
Bill Clinton.
Bill Clinton, yeah, absolutely. Fouad Alami, Richard Pearl. All right, these are not unknown names, guys. Some might be, most of them are not. So if these 60 have their fingers in all of these organizations, it would be an easy thing for 10 to control these 60, I think. And this is really an illustration of how the pyramid works. It's an illustration of how our power structures hang together. Oh, you can never have a conspiracy this big. Yes, you can. Of course you can. Because people don't want to know. I run into people every day. Oh, I don't want to know about that. Oh, don't tell me. Don't tell me.
Unless it affects their triangle, which is work, home, shops.
Correct. You're right, mate. It's willful ignorance that we're facing. Willful ignorance that gives these people the power to do as they please. We've given that away. And to some extent, they have actually made us give up our power, by feeding us, inferior foods, hopping us up on sugar, drugs as well. TV is certainly a massive crime against humanity in its current form. And educational system is not built to educate people at all. It's to dumbify us and make us ignorant.
It's built for us to step on the treadmill.
Yeah, you're 100% correct, Dave, to become servile, as it were. Now, okay, so it's really key that everybody understands just how easy it would be. Well, in fact, just how easy it is to run a society of billions like this. Because for the most part, people just don't know. Even as you move up in the powers in the echelons of power, level after level, you will not have the full picture. I truly believe it's a handful of people that have the full picture, okay, and they make the big decisions.
Yeah, and look, I'm going to put this into reality for a second. So the CEO and the board have, he's pitched something to the board and they've gone with it, and the CEO's gone, great, I'm going to do this thing. This is at a company level. So the the decision to move one company from one address to another, for instance, lift everything up and go to a different address, different building, that isn't known by the security guard at the front gate.
Correct.
He has no clue, and right before they move, he might be told that, next week we're going to be at the new place, right? This is the address. So that's the kind of information you're not. Don't fool yourself into believing that if you have a desk job, you know what the company's direction is for this year.
That's right.
You just don't, right? You're going to think it's whatever they told you last time, and you're going to keep running with whatever that idea was. That's what you're going with.
Mm-hmm.
So I see the same thing as with this group. There's no way we can know what they're thinking. It's like, what was Hitler thinking when he invaded Poland? I don't know. The guy's a nut, right? Don't ask me to think what he was thinking. Don't think what is it the Manson serial killer?
Oh yeah.
Don't ask me to think what he was thinking. I can't.
Yeah.
Right? He was probably thinking, what a lovely day it was. Gee, the sun's bright on my skin.
Maybe
Killing someone. I don't know. Right? We don't think like them. We're not them. We're just told what we're told, and that's pretty much it.
And you said a very important thing, Dave. You said a very important thing. We don't think like them, and that is truer than most people realize. Because take a step back and just think of yourself having been born into privilege. Let's say you're born rich. Your father and mother, they're billionaires. Automatically, your view on the world is very different to 99% of the rest of the world. Automatically. You will probably grow up very privileged, go to the best schools, best education, no worry for the future, right? Now imagine that in a generational sense where you have a dynasty, where you're born not only into power and privilege, but also into rule. You're now ruling people. You're making decisions about their lives, whether or not they die, go to war, invade another country, whatever. Your view on the world would be very, very different, right? And now imagine that you've had that view for thousands of years. Okay? You can't even associate or relate to human beings on our level anymore. This is not possible. You could not, because you take the long view, right? Even government elites these days, like the Bushes, the Bush family, for instance, right? Or even the Clintons, they take a dynastic view. The Windsors of England, any royal family, they take a long view on things, right? And they make decisions, maybe hundreds of years in advance. Now imagine you had a much extended lifespan. You would take decisions very long. I mean, you wouldn't care if 30 million people died of the plague. To you, that's a blink, right? Oh, now 10,000 years have passed. Oh, yeah, well, I don't really care anymore. A billion people, 5 billion people die. Who cares? You're still alive. Nothing will change for your life much.
The point that along this, the narrative that I think, Mekki, you're just missing. I mean, you're selling it. I love it. But the narrative here is that at one point in this, and it was really early on in Mekki's example, which was if you're born into just a wealthy family that lives normal longevity, right? Normal length of time. People below you they're not even reduced to chess pieces. They don't really care as long as their life continues. Right?
Correct.
However, when you get to the point when you're in a dynasty, they're not even chess pieces, they're ignored. Mm-hmm. They're not even part of their life. It makes no sense to even think at the level of the people who are even just wealthy. Mm-hmm. Not let alone the people on the treadmill.
Yep.
That keep the society alive so they can eat. It's irrelevant. And then when you get to the people who are above them, the people who could live forever, what does it matter? What does anything matter anymore? We think about even people within our own pop culture, say the late Michael Jackson. Mm-hmm. If you isolate yourself from the community for long enough, people think you're just a weirdo.
Yes.
Right? You have no connection to that anymore.
Yes.
And wealth can do it. Wealth can push you there. Being part of a dynasty family who thinks long term, or being, say, an immortal in one of the next, rungs up the ladder, like you can't think like them.
Yeah.
We don't even have a thought process that equals theirs.
Yeah. Interestingly, Dave, you said it. This is actually a very good point you made. How they isolate themselves. Any story, any legend, any myth talking about the gods puts them on a high mountain in heaven, out of reach, on an island, but always away from everybody else, higher than everybody else, physically. Right? This is an important theme, guys. Now, but bearing in mind what we said last week, those immortals are just prisoners like we are. They've just figured out a way to sit on top of the heap and make the most of it while they're here in prison. Right? That's really the key thing here. This is the key thing we're trying to get through to you. They might be in charge, but you know what? I'd rather be out of prison than be in charge of prison. And they're sitting here with us, and they haven't got a way out either. And in fact, like we said last week, they might be institutionalized. They might be afraid to leave this prison. All right? I don't think they've cut a deal with the prison warden or the people that put us here or the creatures or whatever. I just think they figured out a way to get out, right?
So in those insulating layers, if you were able to live long enough, you would insulate yourself from people who could know you. You would end up like Batman having the butler that lives his entire life looking after you, then you just employ another one.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's exactly right. And you know, but the next big question, and we won't address it in our next show because we have to do a lot more research. The next big question is, after this, how did we get here? Who's responsible for us, for our higher selves, if you want to call it that, to be imprisoned in these flesh bodies, in these flesh prisons? Who and why are we here? And what does it all mean, right? This will take a lot more research from Dave and I.
And just how old are they?
Yeah. Right. So again, these are massive questions that are still coming our way, and I haven't got the answers. I'll be honest with you. David Icke believed they are shape-shifting reptilians from the lower fourth dimension. The guys that imprisoned us here, right? For instance, not the elite that is ruling our lives, but the actual creatures that imprison us. Maybe, I don't know. There's some evidence, I think, that he's got a point. He's a fascinating speaker. I really enjoy his talks, and I find his books very interesting as well. I don't think he's the racist he's portrayed to be at all. I really don't. I really do believe that he's talking about shape-shifting reptilians rather than some kind of human race that he's trying to denigrate. Mm-hmm. I do believe that he's talking about shape-shifting reptilians. So we shouldn't get our nuts in a knicker over this, because I do believe that's exactly what he believes. Other people believe different things. Scientologists, right? You know what they believe? They believe that we're all imprisoned as well. Only 100,000 of us, though. We were imprisoned in this volcano here on Earth, which blew up. And ever since then, we've been stuck here. Our souls, that is, and we can't get out. Is that true? I don't know. But the theme is certainly not unique. It is not a unique idea that we're selling you here or trying to make you think about. I just don't want you to hope that someone will come along and save you. You really, I think, have to save yourself.
That's the most important message. Even when the people come to my door and trying to sell me their religion,
yeah,
they said, well, he can save you. Well, in fact, I think if you read the words correctly, it was all about empowering yourself to save yourself.
Yes, you're right.
If you don't save yourself, you can't save others. Nope. Who's the first person you should put the oxygen mask onto if you're with a child?
Yourself.
Exactly. So then you can help the child.
Absolutely. You know what you have to do when you're saving a drowning person that is struggling and panicky? You have to knock them out. Right? These are all counterintuitive things, but guess what? If you want to save others, you must make sure that you stay alive to save them, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is the key thing. And Dave, look, you're right. In fact, if you are a Christian, Jesus cannot save you, because that's not what he does. He can only save you if you accept him. That's the tenet, right? What I'm saying to you, though, is that that's not necessarily the case. What I'm saying to you is that it is up to you to live the right life. It is up to you to make the right decisions, right? It is not someone else that will do it for you. You have to do that, right? and I don't care if you're Muslim or Buddhist or Hindu or Christian or an atheist. In fact, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if
the rule's the same.
Yeah, I think the rules are the same for everybody, guys. I mean, it's all irrelevant. I mean, we can't prove any of the things that you believe. Nobody can prove it. You can have the arguments, you can have debates, but you know what? It's what you believe, and that's okay. But make sure that you take the right life path along the way. Make sure you don't kill anyone. All right. Ideally, if you can, be a vegetarian. I know it's hard. I can't be. Not yet. I'm trying.
I tried for a while, and it didn't suit me very well. I think chicken's okay.
But it's tough, right, Dave, to do the right thing. I mean, the holy people, they truly don't kill anything and don't eat anything. They just have the veggies and the fruits and the juices and the water. And they don't hurt anyone, harm anyone. I mean, those are the guys that will, I think, escape. The men and women that can escape this prison. They become spiritually light. They have no chains, like we discussed last week, tying them physically to this place. Mm-hmm. No attachments, you know?
Yeah, do you know what? I want to bring something up. So imagine, say we have I'm just putting it out there, global cataclysm. We have one of those, and the few people left over, it's all good. Imagine if aliens came down and told us, you know, we're going to assist you get back on your feet because everything's been forgotten. This is, you know, the kinds of things you need to do, and we wrote them down on clay tablets. So just giving an example. Okay, we're the first people here, right? So why don't we remember that gold thing? Oh yeah, monatomic elements. Yeah, let's start eating that. And all the other people, we'll just keep it quiet, but we're going to keep alive.
Yeah, that's right.
So we keep alive as long as we can. And we don't want to tell people, so we move around.
Yep.
I can see the scenario working really well, probably not from the exact beginning, but that group of people, as the population got larger, they wouldn't want their population to get larger.
Yes.
Not percentage-wise, right?
Yep.
They want to keep that little group to themselves and sort of keep hidden.
Yep.
And you know, I want to be that guy that discovers it and has his little cups of tea, and you know, and learns all these languages. That would be so unbelievable. I'd like to do that, but I think the saddest part would be watching your family die.
Yeah, I agree.
Right, because I don't think you can bring them all with you. I think that would be a tough trip.
Not everybody would want to. I think, you know.
No, you know, you ask people, and people go, you know, even living through a cataclysm, they say, well, why would I want to live through it? What's there going to be for me at the other side?
That's right.
And I think that's an amazing concept. It doesn't suit me. I'm the survivor guy.
Yeah, same.
I want to go and do it. I want to make sure I'm empowered. I've got the knowledge to better do it. Yeah, it's amazing. So, Mech, you invited me to suggest the interdimensional thing a bit earlier on, but I don't know if we've got enough time.
We have got another 4 minutes. So,
all right.
And this is really important. Again, who are they? And this is where the UFO contact becomes interesting, because Dave has got a very interesting take.
Look, we talked about dimensions, and monatomic gold disappears and it comes back, and I really, if it was at all possible to leave this dimension and go somewhere else, and if you've got to listen to past shows to get your head around it, but I think it's even plausible that and in my experience, that they've got a viewing window on us that they could watch us. I had an example recently where someone came up to me at a funeral and said, you don't know me, but we're watching you and you're doing really well. We're following your progress. And she disappeared in the crowd again. I didn't even know who it is. How could she know me? That was 75 miles away at a funeral. Anyway, so from my experience when my daughter was born, a window opened up. My room became illuminated, but the window was in free space in the room, and the people said that my daughter was beautiful. And then the window closed up, the room became dark again, and I was totally amazed. And then the phone rang, and they said, you need to come to the hospital. Your partner's about to give birth.
Wow.
Right? That happened to me. The other one happened where it appears as though stepping into the room, taking a single step from one dimension to another through what appeared to be just free space in the room, and there's a person standing there. Whitley Strieber's wife has also had an interdimensional experience where she was in a change room, and a person appeared. The door was closed. No one dropped out of the ceiling. The walls are solid. And her friend waiting outside said, but that room was empty when we looked in it.
Wow.
And they asked she asked the lady, who are you? And she looked all confused and just walked away.
That's incredible.
I so believe that dimensional travel exists. Where we go, where we come from, I don't know. But as Mick Jagger once said, doesn't matter where you go as long as you come back.
Nice.
So I'd like to thank everyone for listening to show number 46. Mekki and I love bringing this to you, and let's keep it going.
Absolutely.
Contact us during the week, and let's see if we can get one of those requests with the American government.
That would be, guys. Please do it. I mean, we love the interaction. We really do. You know, we see ourselves as feeding off you if we can.
Yeah, and let's try and get some answers. I'd love to start doing something like this. Let's get some notice.
Absolutely. All right, guys. I think I can hear the music. So have an awesome time. Thanks, Dave.
We'll catch you next week on Shiny Side Out with Dave
and Mekki.
See ya.